Our third speaker is Joisa Dutra, del Centro de Estudios en Regulazado e Infraestructura.
So, I'd like to start by thanking for the invitation and also congratulating Luciano, Edmar, Diogo, and all the people who have made this event possible. And believe me, I know that they have worked really, really hard to make this happen. I'm not going to start with, so firstly, I do not have the format for the event. I was not planning to use the slides, but then my fellow colleagues in the panel had already prepared, and I thought, oh, probably it might help. But let me tell you, let me start, instead of telling a joke, telling the story how I met Fulvio. I was in Italy spending some months the first year of the pandemics. And then all of a sudden, I don't know why, so Amazon came up with this recommendation of Fulvio's book. And at the time, I was the coordinator of our master's in economics at Getúlio Vargas Foundation, the Graduate School of Economics. And then I found it very interesting, organized, simple. I thought it would be an easy way for students to follow the building blocks for electricity market design. And so I looked at the internet. I found a LinkedIn contact. I wrote to him. He replied. We started exchanging messages. The next year, I invited him to join the program, and then he started lectured the first year, if I'm not mistaken, online, yes. And in the second year, he said, you know what, pandemics is over. I'd like to go to Brazil. And then he met students like Thiago, yeah. Fortunately, the experience was good, and then he decided, okay, I want to come back. And now he keeps on telling us, okay, do you have some opportunities I would like to engage with? And I thought this is a great opportunity, because when you're talking about electricity market design, so I don't think we have the best credentials to talk about developments in Europe, yes? So why are you going to learn from me? I think we should learn from people who has experienced all the different waves, patchworks, the building blocks that Jean-Michel was describing. But just as a joke, as per Jean-Michel, I have known him for many more years. But for several years, I had to be introduced to him over and over and over again. But then I thought, oh, this is something related to me, and then people told me. So Miguel told me, no, this is Jean-Michel, and then I understood. This is just a comment, a joke. So what they had included here? When I was trying to structure the few slides here for this presentation. Okay, here I have it. What would be an interesting approach coming, or at least to integrate with the air speeches in an event for Latin America? No flexibility added, so no markets to trade flexibility for this Mac. So what do we have here? Firstly, where do we come from? So this is a platform, not sure you all know, so all you have to do is go to Google, and Amber has several information. So slides, you can download data, integrate, and it's very friendly to prepare slides, classes. And what do they claim? As well, so this was very recent, so what do they claim? As per Latin America, we have advanced significantly in our trajectory to decarbonization. So we have different paces in different countries, advancing mainly wind and solar, already above global average, and also hydropower plants, hydroelectricity, providing the bulk of the region's clean power. When we, of course, the best I can do is talk about Brazil, otherwise, because we have friends here who could talk about the experience of other countries in the region. But this is a report from this platform, July 4, if I'm not mistaken, in which they claim that Brazil is spearheading decarbonization efforts within the G20 group, where more than circa 50% of our energy mix comes from renewables, and over 90% of electricity production, if we are not facing shortage years, comes also from renewable. And what is interesting, or what is fortunate, is that these trends have been maintained despite the rapid increase in electricity demand. That is still a feature of emerging markets like the ones that we have in the region. But when we talk about what is the current debate, Brazil is also the president of G20. And in an effort to identify priorities that would be relevant not only for the country, but also for the region, and also for countries at a similar stage in development. So three priorities were identified. The first one, accelerating financing for the energy transition, particularly in emerging markets and developing economies. The last one, innovative perspectives on sustainable fuels. And the second one, social dimension of the energy transition. So the social dimension is critical for the region. So the country has fallen behind in providing affordable energy and addressing energy poverty. We had opportunities to attend sessions here. Several papers have presented the challenge. As per Brazil, 1 out of 6 people face energy insecurity, a number that doubles when we are talking about the north and the northeast of the country. It means 1 out of 3 people in the north and in the northeast spend more than 6% of its available income to consume electricity services. But then here we are here to talk about what? To talk about electricity market design. And then just some highlights. The mics are willing to move. Yeah, no more. So here, what do we have in electricity markets? When we are talking about, I will only refer to Brazil, okay, but I understand. So Jean-Michel was complaining about patchwork, and also the same applies to Fulvio. It can be more challenging than that. So, and I will, of course, come, as Jean-Michel was mentioning, from an experience of liberalization and reforms in the 90s that have been discussed for several years. In fact, first work of Hurwitz that has been awarded in 2007 for his work on mechanism. So mechanism design dates from 1960. We have several very interesting works applying even to electricity or pricing of utilities dating back to the 70s that would present advances, significant advances, even considering the bulk of price or rate mechanisms that we have today, even here in Brazil. What is interesting is that the traditional recipe for liberalization reforms had a few ingredients And this recipe had been disseminated even in the region with the support of some MDBs. People like Ashley were instrumental in discussing with governments how we could follow guidelines that would attract private sector participation. And in this country, for instance, private sector participation has increased over the last 3 decades, following a non-linear pace. Waves of privatization, and we are on the verge or on the cusp of a reform announced by the government that would the reform would include as a pillar retail competition. But is it enough? Is it enough to talk about retail competition? And so what we have here, and then I'm going to borrow some concepts from recent presentation and also from Dave Newberry, in which he was referring to the absence or the lack of market more than the lack or more than missing money as one of the main challenges posed to electricity market design under a high penetration of variable renewable energy. And why is that? So what are the missing markets? Of course, we know the first one is carbon. Oh, we could price carbon. Then we would certainly move in the direction of decarbonization. We would evolve in the direction of decarbonization. But it's enough? No, it's not. For a system, an electricity system or an electricity framework like the one we have here, there are markets missing that are even more critical. And it's very interesting because in this process of exchanging knowledge with Fulvio over the years, I'm pretty sure that he learned from us, not as much, but a lot, and also how different concepts are. Okay, can you listen? So there is an interference when, okay. So it's very interesting because if you talk to a regular student here in an engineering school, I'm sorry, forgive me, I do not want to generalize, but a lot of people will present pictures. There is a lot of dissertation, master's dissertations, PhD dissertations, mentioning that several countries in the region have liberalized the electricity markets. Fortunately, most of our students learning from Fulvio now understand that this is not the case. And also, Fulvio now understands what do we mean when we talk about a liberalized electricity market in Latin America. Yes? And so this exchange of knowledge is critical. And also by building knowledge, we can evolve on our understanding and maybe contribute to the design of future and risks markets that would be not only instrumental, but critical to sound price formation process, to economic efficiency, a significant part of our evolution. Without these markets, we will not attract capital at the cost we need to advance the energy transition. This is the first. And so, going back also to Newberry, he was presenting, and something that connects with Jean-Michel's presentation, there are several opportunities to fix or try to improve upon the performance of some of these markets. Contracts for with different features, vintages, can be adapted to help us move in the direction of economic efficiency. It may not suffice if we do not have a clear understanding on the importance of addressing futures and risk markets. And it's very interesting because we have several documents, even published by the government to convey messages that are critical to the reforms. And in these documents, they claim that they are addressing risk allocation, but not in the traditional manner from an economist standpoint. This is very important. So how can we disseminate knowledge? And also, okay, I got it. Took me a while. Okay. So there are some other elements in this segment of my speech that also connect with the need to advance electricity market design. Some opportunities. Hybridization, for instance. There is the discussion, ongoing discussion on ways to reform the market that would allow for some sort of mechanism of some sort of structure for hybridization in a contractual framework. But what we do not have is a common understanding, or at least develop an understanding of the building blocks to define the main markets that are needed in the spirit of market design, mechanism design. This is one aspect. But as we are talking about Latin America and also the specifics that we have, I think there is one key element that we must address every time we are talking about markets, or at least the evolution of the electricity system. And it goes back to one of the priorities set by the government to the G20 presidency, and also in our way to COP30 in the year of 2025. And we are talking about the social dimension of the energy transition, considering deployment or development of renewable energy. And then I would like to invite my colleagues here, students, to look for evidence to inform policy, implementation, and also assessment of these policies that we have experienced to advance clean energy technologies. And it goes back also to Ashley yesterday, because Ashley was telling about the challenges posed by lobbying efforts that keep on telling us, oh, we should have 1,000 more towers, 1,000 more wind power plants, how many more wind power plants and solar farms, and we have not been able to assess, to evaluate the impact of these developments. And even for technologies that have become cost-effectively or cost-competitive at a very, very fast pace. And I took the liberty of emphasizing this is a report produced by the New Development Bank. This is the BRICS Bank, and this is a project to evaluate performance of lending operations from 2016 to 2018 to deploy solar and wind farms in the northeast of the country. A colleague of us was part of this external appraisal, and it's very interesting that in the process they identified significant gaps from the social perspective, meaning insufficient community engagement, inadequate focus on gender and social inclusion, and also shortcomings in conducting comprehensive social impact assessments. And we can not only resort to this sort of document, but also we can resort to our literature. We have good people, good researchers doing significant studies to help us understand what are the real impacts on local communities, on, disadvantaged groups, indigenous populations, And in a nutshell, these are two papers. One is from a professor from our school, Sophie, and the other one is a very recent NBR paper, 2024, and they both assess impacts of solar and wind power projects in Brazil. Sophie's work goes from 2006 to 2017, and Schleifel goes from 2007 to 2021. And they have very sound results as per the import, talking about the impacts of these developments on local employment, also on fiscal revenues, the ability to benefit also unskilled workers in the communities. And these technologies have very different impacts. As per fiscal revenues, they have long-term impacts, but solar power can be beneficial to unskilled workers in the short term, but wind power has long-lasting effects on the communities. And this sort of study, this sort of research can help us better understand how can we have developments, deployment of renewable technologies that not only produce impacts for a short term, but also could benefit communities, and in the end of the day could be even phased out. We should as well look at each of these technologies, the ones that are becoming competitive, and also we should also try to design incentives that allow these technologies to go into the market, to become competitive, but once they have reached competitiveness, then we could transfer resources to other more important needs in the communities. And this sort of research, I invite you, can also be extended to help assess energy efficiency programs coming or from, say, severe situations like the one we faced in the 2001-2002 drought. So the economic literature can help us understand social impacts, what are the long-lasting impacts, what is short-term, how have these impacts been distributed among different groups, disadvantaged communities, and the work that we have done at our group has also contributed or aims to contribute to understanding of the social impacts on a high level of resolution. This is for us not to integrate, but also to keep track of the social dimension of the energy transition. There was one more slide talking about demand response. No, it's not. I decided to take it off. So as per demand response, the focus of this presentation here. So we already had some presentations. We are still in the phase of sandboxing, yes, at the system operator level. According to a regulation, a ruling from 2022, we have benefited from a voluntary program in 2021, a year in which we experienced a significant shortage in the a threat of a rationing program. The alternative was to resort to several instruments, among them demand response program on a voluntary basis. But we are still, I dare say, in the early stages of advancing markets for resources like demand response. I claim in my presentation that we have very important markets to design properly, such as the ahead, for instance, so that we can evolve in risk allocation and future markets as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joisa. Thank you, Fulvio. Thank you, Michel. Any questions?
Yeah, The question, we had two people talking about European market design, or market design in Europe and in Brazil. And one of the contrasts that really stands out is that in Europe, the regulation is decentralized, although there's some efforts to coordinate. But Jean-Michel, you're the expert on this. But it's whereas in Brazil, regulation is highly centralized. So I have sort of two questions that flow out of that. One is, what lessons do you draw from either decentralized or centralized regulation in terms of what they enable or what they inhibit? And then the second is, how do you manage outside political interference? By interference, I don't mean directly favoritism, but things like providing subsidies for certain resources and not for others. How do you try to balance that into the market without skewing it in ways that make it non-competitive or less competitive than is optimal?
Wow. This is a 5 minutes question, you know, in 2 words I will answer. No, it's of course, it's extremely complex. It's hard to say. To some extent, the European regulation is a kind of a unique experiment, right? Quite a complex one, because we have different, as you said, you know, vertical layer of regulation and horizontal layers of regulation, and this is extremely complex. Has this been effective? Could that be done better? Probably so. Unfortunately, what I see is that there is a tendency towards an increasing fragmentation, also at the regulation level, not a tendency towards homogenization or and so what I think is that it's not, I mean, on one hand, there are transaction costs. You need to debate everything, basically, and agree, well, this is a typical, you know, economic analysis of law. The more you disaggregate decision-making, the more transaction costs increases. It's not just that. As I said, I have the feeling that of course, you know, this comes from a place in which there were, there were and still are relevant, significant differences. You know, I remember the old joke by, I don't remember which American presidents, that when I pick up my phone, I know how to call who I have to call in the USSR by then, but I don't know who I have to call in Europe, which makes sense because it's the way it is. But the problem is that maybe there are some systems in which this differentiation in regulation works better. I'm afraid I think that for power it is not the case. Because as I said, power requires, reflects laws, law of physics, that are the same everywhere, regardless of how you call them, how you regulate. So it is true that Joisa was right. I think I've learned a lot by coming here. In terms of what do you mean when you say something? What do you have in mind behind when you say something? When you say market, when you say regulation, when you say affordability, and so on and so forth. But on top of what you mean by the different concepts, the principles are the same. So there should not be too much room for a too high differentiation. I don't think that, unfortunately, that's the way we are going, at least in Europe. I hope in Latin America you won't do the same mistake as we did.
Regulation is called or shield politics. That's why it's mainly done at national level. But it's not a decision, it's a constraint. And you have the same in the US, I know the same in India, and the same in Australia, and the same in Canada. Also, we can, Brazil, I do not know. That's ridiculous, but I do not know Brazil. Huh? It's a fact. So, can we work against this fact? The European leaders work only with consensus. They do not fight each other. They try to fight, like it's Switzerland. In Switzerland, you have the same government for 10 years. They do not look at election results. It is the same government. If I simplify, the same at European level, the same government for 20 years, but there is many things they cannot do. Because of this, are we able to change it? Enrico Letta, former Prime Minister of Italy, is saying we have to change this, notably for energy, and in energy, notably for electricity. Is it doable? No idea. Mario Draghi, another Italian Prime Minister, is saying we have to change this. Will we be able? Not obvious. Now, I have in my school, my former school, I'm not the boss since 2 years, a former European commissioner for 10 years. And the 5 first years, he was commissioner for energy. He knows this difficulty, so he used a trick. The trick is very simple. You take all the regulators at national level, you put them together, you are the European regulator. You take all the transmission operators at national level, you put them together, you are the European transmission operator. It worked a little bit. They have been to do things incredible. The market design. Market design, we were unable in EU because it has to be done by the parliament. I've never seen a parliament doing a market design, so it has to be done by other people. So they have been able to do things. Is it enough? And in India, they are still unable to do what we did in the EU. I cannot tell you more than this because I do not know more than this.
So one aspect, so we have a very recent, so Ashley and I have a very recent article, an op-ed column at Jota, Merchandise, in which we assess what we call the sunset of independent regulation, careful with what you wish for. And why is that? We are talking about so the increasing, also the trend of politicizing, increased politics in regulation, and I dare say this is a consequence of a demand or the way the industry has worked recently, pledging for benefits or benefits in policies, for instance, for nuke or for clean energy technologies. The consequence is that we have shifted power from the regulator, even to work at the level of policies to be detailed, to be implemented, to Congress. The consequence is that we may threaten or so it might be much more difficult to get articulated responses to the emerging challenges that we face. Another point, very briefly, that I would like to make is that there is a very famous, very important result in economics that says that the number of goals, policy goals, must be equal to the number of instruments. And what we have over the years, we have added more goals, environmental goals, social goals, without including the instruments, say carbon pricing. Yes. Exactly, and so it becomes increasingly difficult to have articulated responses, and this probably helps explain the run or the dash for the Congress that we are experiencing right now. It does not add to good policy making, or it does not add to good implementation of policies.
Thank you. Another question? No? No pues. Well, we finish our session. It has been very productive. Thankful three. It's a pleasure to be in this stage with this room with all of you. Thank you very much and have a nice time